Lecture 17, John F. Kennedy, 1961 to 1963. Now this is the fourth time I've tried to do this video. Every time there has been some kind of problem with the embedded photos that caused it to time out, run over, missing photos. I finally gave up and recreated this part of the PowerPoint from scratch, although I simplified it. So there's a little less photos than normal, but I'll make sure to cover this stuff. So when you get to the second video, some of the photos reappear. It's been a very strange embedded thing. I don't know what the problem was, but like I said, I finally had to create it from scratch. So let's get on with it, shall we? Alright, so John F. Kennedy. Alright. Basic version, photo-wise. Alright, so Kennedy said that, the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. And he's younger than most presidents. He's in his mid-40s. I believe he was, at the time he was elected, he was the youngest man to be elected president. Now, he and Barack Obama were about the same age when they became president, so Obama might have skirted in under Kennedy since then. Theodore Roosevelt was about the same age, but he wasn't elected originally. So these are like three guys who were all in their mid-40s. Okay? So it says here the Kennedy style. Okay, well, because Kennedy's younger than your typical presidents, he's got young children in the White House. First time in a long time. There's little kids running up and down the aisles. Okay, Kennedy had a good rapport with the press. At press conferences, he seemed to get along with them. They could banter back and forth, something not all presidents have. He's got a young wife who's attractive, and people are in love with her. They want to know what she's wearing. What's Jackie Kennedy wearing? So it's a very, excuse me. Sorry, had a coughing fit. Where were we? So he's got a pretty wife. She dresses nice. There's kids in the house. He gets along well with the press. So he's kind of very personable. Okay? That's the Kennedy style. Space program. The original notes basically have nothing on the space program except to know that Kennedy's always associated with it. Right? Now, the space program had started back under Eisenhower, really. But under Kennedy, it'll slip into a new higher gear. And what I hope to do, I'm really interested in the space program. It's one of the fun things I like. And so I might try to do a little extra lecture at the end of the series about that. So I'll try to come back to that. But he's the one who came up with the idea of trying to send Americans to the moon. Okay? So the space program pre-existed him, but he ratchets it up to high gear. And like I said, maybe we'll have time to talk more about this later. But the thing I really want to get into video 1 here, okay, is the Civil Rights Movement. Now, there's two big things going on in the Kennedy administration. Two big threads. One is the Cold War, which is in video 2, and one is the Civil Rights Movement. Now, the Civil Rights Movement had really started to pick up after Brown versus Board of Education, and then you had the Montgomery bus boycott, and you had the Little Rock 9. These were all things that happened in the Eisenhower administration. So it's taken on kind of a life of its own. And Kennedy's not really leading the civil rights movement. He's not necessarily, but he's not necessarily hostile towards it. I think he had treading carefully on it. There talks in the book some about it. But his administration will try to enforce the federal mandates that the states were not taking care of. So more on that here in a minute. Or actually, like I said, the book talks about it. I glanced in the book just before I started this. Okay. But I'm going to give you a handful of examples. Now, the book has additional examples, and then I've got a couple here that aren't in the book. It doesn't look like. So this is always the problem. There's only so many pages in the book. So let's talk about some of these things. We'll click through them. Okay. 1. This is a blank slide here. Okay. One thing going on is the lunch counter sit-ins. Okay. Now, the book has a lot on this, paragraph or two, so I won't give a lot of details here. This was in North Carolina. Okay. These 4 college students go into the segregated lunch counter, sit down. Hey, I'd like a sandwich and a Coke and a slice of pie. And it's like, well, we don't serve Negroes here. Okay. But we've got money. We'll sit right here until we get our lunch, and they know we're not going to get lunch, and it's not the point. The point is to make a statement, because what they'll do is they'll sit there all day, okay, waiting for food that's never going to come. Okay? And of course, what they're really doing here is tying up seats that the white patrons then won't sit at, and so they're hurting the lunch counter in the pocketbook. It's a form of economic protest. Okay, so the book, then these things spread. Okay, so the book talks about this, so I won't go into a lot of detail on this one. Okay? Another thing that's going on during this Kennedy administration are the freedom rides. Now, the book talks about this too, so I'll just show you some pictures. But people who are protesting the segregation in the South, because even after the bus boycott, there's still this going on, we're trying to prove a point. So look at this picture here. There's mostly college age kids. White folks, there's black folks too, although none are in the picture for some reason. But this was a biracial thing. Okay, they would ride down into the South, sitting together, and this of course would tick off the segregationists in the South. Okay, so the bus would arrive in town, and, there'd be riots and violence. Once again, the book talks about this pretty well, so I'll just kind of go over it. I'm determined to get this video in the time frame where I can slide it in, because I want to post this thing on YouTube. Be done with it. So here's a few pictures. Here's a couple of freedom riders. Now it's hard to tell because it's a black and white photo, but I'm guessing all those dark stains on both of these guys probably isn't chocolate syrup. Okay, it's blood. Someone's been beating these guys up. In Alabama, a bus was actually firebombed. Okay, arson is considered a capital crime for a reason, because you can kill people. Now, nobody was killed in this one, but it could have very easily happened. You start blowing up buses, and people can get hurt. In fact, the book doesn't mention this, but my notes say that the only reason they got off the bus is there was an FBI agent on the scene, kind of undercover, keeping an eye on things. And when the people were trying to keep the people from getting off the bus, he pulled a gun apparently and made sure they could get off the bus before it burned up. Okay? So freedom rides, they're in the book. Okay? And here's a map of some of the freedom rides. See, they would start off up in the north. It's the South, but they would start from the northern part of the South where things quite so bad and head south. And this is in 1961, you'll see on this map. And if you look at this, it may be hard to tell on this small screen as opposed to the PowerPoint we would have in a classroom. But look at this, 300 jailed, 4 jailed, 9 arrested, 10 jailed. So they're what Southerners might call outside agitators, right? And look at the dates here, April going through December. So this is a long thing. It goes on for months and months. Okay? Now something else, and I don't believe this is in the book. I took a quick glance, didn't see it. Okay, but remember Brown versus Board? It talked about public schooling. Okay, shouldn't be segregated. Well, what about at the university? Well, this is the University of Mississippi. Okay, there's a gentleman by the name of James Meredith. He's the black gentleman in the middle of these three guys. Now I wikied James Meredith a couple of days ago on one of the earlier attempts to kind of learn a little bit about him, because I was curious. He was an Air Force veteran apparently. Apparently he had been studying at the Black University in Mississippi, which I think was at Jackson, if I recall. Was getting good grades, and so he applied to go into the University of Mississippi, which of course did not allow blacks to go there. But you know what? They pay taxes too, and it's a state university. So, and the federal government the Supreme Court has ruled you can't segregate. It's discriminatory. So he's deliberately pushing the boundaries. Okay, and this will cause a lot of friction from people who don't want him there. So this photo, and I wish it was a little larger, but I really did slap this thing together quickly. The guy in the middle is Meredith, and he's being escorted around campus by government officials. Okay, they're to maintain enforce the law. I mean, this guy, it's kind of hard to tell in the smaller photo, but the bigger photo I had, the original PowerPoint, which was all wonky, this guy's wearing a helmet. Okay, so he's obviously expecting trouble. Right? And I don't know who this guy is, but he looks mean, and I wouldn't want to mess with him. So here's Meredith just wanting to go to classes, get enrolled, and he has like federal officials escort him around the campus. Okay, so this is in Mississippi. Now, a similar situation arises in Alabama. Okay? Another deep severed state. Got a picture here. Yeah, this guy is standing in the center with his hands behind his back is Governor George Wallace. He is the governor of Alabama. Okay? This is called the stand in the schoolhouse door. Okay? And look, he's got state troopers with him there, got helmets on and stuff. And he's basically sitting there going, we don't want any blacks in our university. And this guy right here is a federal official. I think it's Assistant Attorney General Katzenbach, I think, but it's not important. But I mean, look at the look on his face and his body English. Wallace, this body English here says a lot. Wallace is making his stand, and here's the federal official going, let me explain to you, Governor, what's about to happen here. Okay? And so they will desegregate, the universities in the South, but it's this long struggle. Okay? The book barely mentions Wallace, but he's in there for a second. Okay? I'm sure this was going on in other southern states as well. All right. Wallace, by the way, now this has nothing to do with what's happening right this moment, because this is during the Kennedy administration. But later in his life, Wallace was running for president. It was around 71, 72, and someone tries to assassinate him. Now, not because he's a racist, jerk necessarily. It's just the guy was one of these loony people who wants to assassinate somebody, because he had a list, and he had all kinds of different people on the list. It was just who he could get close enough to. He just wanted to be a famous assassin. And so he shot George Wallace. And George Wallace ended up paralyzed for the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Okay, so I got a picture of that. Okay. It's not here. There it is. So later in his life, Wallace became a born-again Christian. He renounced his segregationist ways. He got reelected to be governor of Alabama again, and in his later administration, after he renounced his past, he started appointing African Americans to positions of authority, and so he changed his tune. Okay, so the moral of the story is maybe it's never too late for redemption. Okay, now did he do this just to be self-serving and try to get elected in a state that has a lot of black voters? I don't know. I can't see into the man's heart, but I like to be charitable in my opinion of people, and sometimes folks do change their stripes. I mean, if you grow up in a Jim Crow society, and that's what you've experienced your whole life, you just kind of think that's the way things are. But anyway, George Wallace famous for his segregationist ways during the Kennedy administration. All right, I got one more slide here, and this will come in at the proper time, because what was happening on the earlier ones is some kind of embedded video or something. I would stop it short enough to finish, but then it would keep running, and it would come up over long. So anyway, I slapped this one together. The last thing I want you to know about is the March on Washington. Okay? And I'm not going to talk about this really because it's in the textbook. Okay, but this was 63 if I recall. Okay, this is where Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Okay, which is one of the most famous speeches in American political history. Okay, and it's during this March on Washington when all these thousands and thousands of people show up. Okay, I'm running out of time. We're going to call it a quits. Look up all these things in your textbook, and we'll go into video 2, which for some reason seems to work okay when I try to record it.